All right, I want to talk about another student argument and ways that we can tighten it up and state it formally and validly. So the student says this, premise one, killing lessens the amount of human life lived. Premise two, also taking someone's life, you're not only taking that person from their family for eternity, but you also violate their fundamental right to life. If it is agreed upon that life is to be respected and valued, then the unlawful and sudden taking of that life, typo, is inherently unjust. Conclusion, therefore, to kill someone is morally wrong because as humans, we are supposed to be here to socialize, love, and procreate. Okay, there's a lot of good ideas in here. In fact, so many that they're overflowing. But let me start with a simple point, and that is numbering. You don't have to say premise, conclusion, just number them, right? So you can make it look like this. Killing lessens the life, the amount of human life lived. Second point here, I only want there to be one sentence per line of argument. Each premise should just be one statement. A conclusion should just be one statement. But you'll notice here that in the second line, the second premise, we've actually got at least two statements. So we want to break those up into distinct lines like this. Okay, now I broke that up into 2 and 3. So we've got 4 lines here. There's another issue here, and that is that there's just a lot of filler, kind of conversational filler in the argument. I want my arguments to be stated as tightly, as precisely, and concisely as possible. So I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. So take, for example, that second premise. Also, taking someone's life, you're not only taking that person from their family, but you're also violating the fundamental right to life. Here's what I want to make that revised version. Killing someone takes them from their family and violates their fundamental right to life. A lot cleaner. And then premise 3, I can drop out some chaff too. It says it is agreed upon, if it is agreed upon that life is to be respected and valued. Honestly, I don't think the author really cares if we agree upon it or not. It's just if it's true that life is to be respected and valued. So I'm going to cut that out. And I cut out a few other needless words. Make it concise, make it precise. So here's what that leaves us. What I want to do is there's a bunch of different thoughts in here, actually unrelated claims, and I want to distinguish them from each other. I'm going to put them on different lines because there's no reason they need to be clumped together. Take, for example, that third line. Killing someone takes them from their family and violates their fundamental right to life. I don't know why those need to be part of one sentence any more than any of the other lines do. So I'm just going to say premise 2, killing someone takes them from their family. Premise 3, killing someone violates the fundamental right to life. Those are different notions, going to make them different lines. All right. Now, here's the big issue, I think, with this. Each one of these lines here, there's one more preliminary thing I want to say. No line should contain words like since or because. And I want you to notice that our 5th line did. Killing someone is wrong because as humans, we're supposed to socialize, love, and procreate. Now, when you see the word because there's actually a premise and a conclusion baked into that sentence. Well, I want this last line to just be the conclusion. Premises should be distinct. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to break it up. Premise, humans are supposed to socialize, love, and procreate. Therefore, to kill someone's morally wrong. The word because precedes a premise and it follows it justifies some other conclusion. So I split them up. Now here's the big issue. Now I've got 6 premises. 5 premises and a conclusion in this argument, which is fine, except that these lines aren't all logically connected. They're like several totally distinct, unrelated considerations, each of which is interesting and important and could be developed into its own argument. But we want to distinguish these different lines of thought and just pursue one argument at a time. So I'm going to focus here, and I could focus on any one of these lines and develop it into an argument for the conclusion, I think. Let me just give you a couple of examples, all right? Let's just take premise 1 here. Killing lessens the amount of human life lived. Therefore, let's just take that as a reason for killing is wrong. Therefore, killing is morally wrong. All right. Now, what's the issue? Well, one issue I've got here is that it's not formally valid. I mean, we can conceive of a world in which, yeah, killing lessens the amount of human life lived, but it's not morally wrong. I mean, there's nothing about that line alone, about that statement alone, that killing lessens the amount of life lived, that necessitates that therefore it's wrong. We need another premise in here to make this a valid inference. You can use the modus ponens magic trick to do that. Remember how to do that, how to use the modus ponens magic trick. You've got premise and conclusion. Just put in a conditional premise that says, if the first thing, then the second thing, just like this. If killing lessens the amount of human life lived, then killing is morally wrong. Now what we've got here is a really tight, clean, valid, logically valid argument. Now, I'm not saying it's a sound argument. In order for the argument to be sound, it not only has to be logically valid, but all the premises have to be true. But by formalizing it this way, really making it precise, now we're in a much better position to evaluate, are these premises actually true? I mean, number one seems pretty obviously true. When you killing by definition shortens a life, right? But is it true that that consideration alone is sufficient to make killing morally wrong? For example, I mean, you could think about cases of self-defense. If I kill my attacker so that he doesn't kill me, I've certainly shortened his life, right? Does that make my killing morally wrong? So that I'm thinking of objections to premise 2 here by thinking, is there any cases where the if clause is true, but the then clause is actually false? So I want to try to think about counterexamples where killing does do that. It lessens the amount of human life lived, and yet it's not therefore wrong. That's just how you would think through it. Now, remember, I had a bunch of considerations back here. I could develop different ones of them, right, into their own arguments. Let me do another possibility. So one of the other premises said, if life is to be respected and valued, then the unlawful and sudden taking of life is inherently unjust. Therefore, to kill someone is morally wrong. Okay, if I want to develop this interesting claim, there's a couple things I might want to do. First of all, when you're making an argument, you want to keep your terms precisely consistent, right? And you want to make the argument valid. Now, I say make it precisely consistent. Notice that when I say that the unlawful and sudden taking of life is inherently unjust, I'm really using a synonymous expression for saying it's morally wrong. Well, I should just pick one and use it in both lines. If I'm meaning the same thing, inherently unjust and morally wrong, pick the same phraseology, keep it consistent. So I'll make it this. If life is to be respected and valued, then the unlawful and sudden taking of life is inherently unjust. Therefore, my conclusion is going to be the unlawful and sudden taking of life is inherently unjust. That typo is driving me nuts, but sorry, it's in there all the time. Now, I need to make this valid. I can do it by using the modus ponens magic trick, right? Because it's not valid yet. Here's what it would be. In this case, I already had the conditional statement, the if-then. I just need to add in a line that contained the antecedent, the if clause, and asserted it. Usually it runs in the opposite direction. We got the antecedent clause and we want to add in a conditional which connects it with the conclusion. In this case, it was the opposite. So if life is to be respected and valued, then the unlawful and sudden taking of life is inherently unjust. Life is to be respected and valued, therefore the unlawful and sudden taking of life is inherently unjust. Now, I've got some other questions here about this argument, right? Once you get it formalized, then you can really start to see clearly what's at stake, what it's saying. Like, what does the suddenness have to do with anything? I mean, I could starve you to death slowly, like in concentration camps. That's not sudden, but that seems like that would also be wrong. So maybe I might want to drop the sudden qualification out of this. Secondly, it says that the unlawful and sudden taking of life is inherently unjust. Now, what does lawful mean here? Does it mean it goes against the laws of human governments? Because I mean, I think there's a lot of killings which, even if they're don't violate the laws of the government, it'd still be wrong, right? Again, you could think of the Nazis that didn't violate their laws to do super bad things to their victims. It wasn't unlawful in that sense, but it was still wrong. So we want to think really carefully about the terms we're using in our arguments. Is that really what we want to say? All right, that's that one.